Okay, today shouldn't take too long, but the information that I have for you guys will be very, very, very helpful. You guys will quickly realize that when I hold these quiz reviews, they are really, really helpful. All right. So let's take a look at our checklist. Yesterday, your research project was due. I know a couple of you guys sent me a message and said, hey, I'm really close to being finished. Can I submit it today? No problem. Just get it to me as soon as possible. The sooner, the better. Um, let's go ahead and take a look at our checklist for today. All right. So yesterday, hopefully you finished your research project. What do we need to do today? Okay. So first and foremost, we're going to have our little quiz review. And then I think it's short. I think it's like 15, 16 questions. And you will very quickly realize, okay, wow, these questions are very similar to the quiz questions. Then your quiz will open, I think, at 12:20 p.m. So we should be done by then. And then you'll have the last like 25 minutes of class to take your quiz. Now, don't forget that we not only do we have our quiz today, so we got to take our quiz, you need to turn in for your Unit 2 notes. You need to turn in your Unit 2 notes today as well, okay? So those are two things that are due today, your quiz as well as your Unit 2 notes, okay? If you don't turn the notes in until tomorrow, that's perfectly fine, but I do need you to take the quiz today, all right? So quizzes are one of those things, like when I assign them, you need to get those done as soon as possible. All right, so let's go ahead and start our review for the day. What I would like for each of you guys to do is to please join the Kahoot. I usually assign extra credit onto your quizzes for participating in the Kahoot. So if you would, you can go to www.kahoot.it and then you can type in this game pin. And please just use your first name for your Kahoot username so that I can give you the appropriate credit. So there's 14 of you guys in here right now, so I'm going to wait till I see 14 people sign into the Kahoot. Okay, still waiting on a few. If for whatever reason your Wi-Fi, your phone, or your computer won't let you join, you can actually play along in the chat box below. If you go to the Zoom chat, you can set the message status to private. That way when you send messages, I only get it. So only I can see your answers. All right, last chance to join to get your credit for participating. If you, for whatever reason, because of tech issues, couldn't join, you can always just send me private chat messages with the answer so I can give you credit. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Oh. All right, Tay, if you would, please join the Kahoot as quickly as possible. Why are people showing up 15 minutes late? Please join the Kahoot as quickly as possible. And y'all, please try to be on time. It's really difficult for me to have to like go back and redo attendance. Class will always start at 11:45, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Fridays, unless otherwise specified. Yeah, I do give more extra credit for first, second, and third place. So everyone gets extra credit for participating, but you get more credit for first, second, and third place. I'm gonna wait one more minute. All right, well, we got to get this ball rolling so we can get this taken care of before you're and give you plenty of time to take your quiz. If you didn't get a chance to join, you can just type your answers in the chat box. All right, what elements make up a protein? So proteins are a class of biomolecules that contain what elements? Carbohydrates and lipids contain carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Nitrogen, however, contains an additional element. Sorry, my cushion fell off. Yes, the correct answer is carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. Nucleic acids, which were the other group of biomolecules you were supposed to watch a video about this week, are the ones that contain carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, as well as phosphorus. What elements make up a nucleic acid? So if you were studying a nucleic acid like DNA, RNA, or ATP, what elements would you find in a nucleic acid? Yes, right? So proteins have carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. Nucleic acids have carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and phosphorus. What is the monomer or building block of a protein? So building block of proteins. Proteins are made out of many what? If you actually go to the GNC store, you can actually buy these to help your body build skeletal muscles if you're an athlete. Hold on, I gotta answer a question. If for whatever reason you do get kicked out, the join code, the join pin is still down here in the bottom corner, right? What is the monomer for protein called? The monomer for proteins are called amino acids, right? So when you eat a piece of chicken, your body releases enzymes that break down the chicken protein into a bunch of smaller amino acids. Then your body absorbs those amino acids, rearranges them to make different proteins like your hair, your muscle, and certain protein hormones like insulin, right? So all of our proteins in our body are made of different amino acids. As an athlete, there are specific amino acids that help us build skeletal muscle. So some professional athletes will actually supplement their diet with isolated amino acids. They'll actually have amino acids in like a powdered form, and that'll make sure that those athletes are getting the appropriate amino acids to help them recover and to help them build bigger, stronger skeletal muscles. What is the monomer for a nucleic acid? So what are nucleic acids built out of? Nucleic acids are large polymers made of many small monomers. So which of these things do you think are used to make or build large polymer nucleic acids? I'll give you a hint. It kind of sounds like nucleic acid. Yeah, so that would be nucleotide. Nucleotides get tied together to form nucleic acids. DNA is an example of a nucleic acid. DNA is probably, you know, the most famous of all the nucleic acids. And if for whatever reason you joined late or you got kicked out, you can play along by typing your answer in the chat box. You can actually set the chat box so that it only sends me your answers, right? It's a private chat. What is the function of a protein, right? So we need protein in our diets, but why? What can our body do with proteins? Which of these sounds like a reason why we need protein? Good. We need proteins for structures like our skeletal muscle. The collagen in my face is what allows me to stretch my skin, and when I let go, it goes right back into place. That's because of the collagen protein. My hair, my fingernails, they're actually made of protein. So I need to eat protein so I can digest it into the amino acids. So my body has the amino acids to make my protein, to make my muscle, my collagen, my fingernail, and other proteins like enzymes that are found in our digestive tract that help break down our food. Believe it or not, protein is actually a very, very, very poor source of energy. If you just ate meat, you're really not going to get a lot of energy from the protein. You're going to get energy from the fat, right? We need energy from fats, which are known as lipids, and carbohydrates. Protein is not a good source of energy. Think about it like this. If you were left on a deserted island and you were starving, the first thing your body's going to break down for energy is glycogen or blood glucose, the sugars that are temporarily stored in the short term in your body. The next thing your body will start to break down is fat. Fat's actually a really good source of highly concentrated energy. Now, if your body's already broken down all the carbohydrates, your body's broken down all the lipids, aka the fats and oils, the last thing it turns on is protein. And that would be like muscle wasting, right? You'd notice your muscles starting to break down and you get really weak and couldn't stand up because protein does not supply a lot of energy. What is another function of a protein? So what else can proteins do? And I'll give you a hint. Insulin, adrenaline, oxytocin are all proteins that can send messages throughout the body. And then we've got lots of proteins that help break down things in our bodies. Yes, proteins can act as enzymes. We have enzymes in our spit that actually help us break down starch. Starch, its scientific name is amylose. We make an enzyme in our saliva known as amylase, and that enzyme breaks down that sugar. If you are lactose intolerant, that means you cannot break down milk sugar. And that is because your body does not make lactase, which is the enzyme needed to break that sugar down. Proteins can act as messengers. Insulin tells our body when our blood sugar is too high. Adrenaline tells us when it's time to fight or flight. Receptor cells. There are lots of little proteins sticking on the outside of cells that help cells recognize each other. In fact, antibodies are types of little receptors that our bodies make to try to fight viruses and bacteria. What is one function for nucleic acids? So what can our body use nucleic acids for? This is the other group of biomolecules you were supposed to have watched a video on this week. I'll give you a hint. DNA is probably the most famous nucleic acid of them all. And so what is DNA all about? We'll talk a lot about DNA later on the semester. Yes, nucleic acids are used to store genetic information, and they contain the codes to make proteins, believe it or not. So your DNA is like an information storage place, and the DNA contains instructions on how to make proteins. So our bodies, our cells use the DNA as like an instruction manual on how to make the proteins that our body needs. What are some examples of nucleic acids? Which of these would be classified as nucleic acids? Large polymers made of many nucleotides. Starch, glycogen, and cellulose, these are all polysaccharide carbohydrates. Enzymes would be classified as proteins. Fats, oils, and waxes would be classified as lipids. And so DNA and RNA are classified as nucleic acids. In fact, the name DNA, if you look at your PowerPoint, your slides, and your notes, DNA stands for deoxyribose or deoxyribonucleic acid. Deoxyribonucleic acid. That's what DNA stands for. Deoxyribonucleic acid. So the D comes from the deoxyribo, which is actually the sugar, deoxyribose, the N for nucleic, and then the A for acid. And so RNA is ribonucleic acid because it does not contain deoxyribose, it contains simply ribose, right? So DNA and RNA are very famous nucleic acids that will be made of many nucleotides used for storing and kind of transmitting genetic information. Lactase, amylase, and lipase are all what? You need these to digest food. And that's supposed to be a D right there. So what in your body would help you digest and break down these foods right here? Yep. Yes. So our body will actually make special enzymes to break down these different food groups, right? So we got lots of different enzymes in our body. And how are you going to recognize them? A lot of them end with ASE, right? ASE, that says, oh, okay, it's probably an enzyme. Okay, we got lots of different enzymes. Carbohydrates are sugars, and they tend to end in OSE, like lactose, sucrose, amylose, fructose. Whereas enzymes are proteins that our bodies use to break down all kinds of things, right? Lactase breaks down milk sugar, known as lactose. Amylase is actually in our saliva. It helps us break down starch, right? And like potatoes and potato chips. And technically the scientific name for starch would be amylose. And lipase is an enzyme our body makes to break down fat. Remember, fats are lipids. What type of bond is used to hold amino acids together inside of proteins? And if you need to make sure that you've looked at the PowerPoints and watched the video that I made about these. Another name for a protein is a polypeptide, right? So proteins are held together by peptide bonds. And since we have so many amino acids linked together in proteins, proteins can be thousands or can contain thousands of amino acids held together by these unusually strong bonds known as peptide bonds. And the function of a protein is actually determined by its shape. The protein will end up folding over on itself. And the reason it folds a certain way is actually the order of amino acids. If you change the order or the sequence of the amino acid, you change the shape of the protein. If you change the shape of the protein, then you change its function or what it can do. What determines the structure and function of a protein? What determines the structure and function of proteins? Good, the amino acid sequence. If I change that amino acid sequence, I'm going to change the way that the protein folds, which changes its shape. And if I change its shape, I'm going to change the structure and the function. What are the three parts of a nucleotide? If you look at the PowerPoint, right, I talk a lot about the structure of a nucleotide, which is the monomer or building block of nucleic acids. Nucleotides contain what three things? Yes, every nucleotide is going to contain these three things. It's going to have a 5-carbon sugar, right? It's going to have a sugar. It's going to have a phosphate group. It's going to have a phosphate. And then it's going to have a nitrogen base. How I remember this is every sweet house has a swimming pool and a Nissan in the garage. I don't know. I thought about that when I was in high school well over a decade ago, and it's still stuck with me ever since. So this is what a nucleotide looks like. If this nucleotide were DNA, the sugar would be deoxyribose. If this nucleotide was found in RNA, it would be ribose. And there are lots of other differences and similarities between DNA and RNA, both of which can be found in the PowerPoint as well as the video that I created for you guys. Okay, we got a few more. What two conditions can denature enzymes and proteins? In other words, what environmental conditions can destroy or change the shape of proteins or change the shape of enzymes? These two things, yes, pH and temperature. Think of it like this. Cooking is chemistry. When you crack a raw egg into a frying pan, you expose it to high temperature, and that's why it goes from clear to white. You actually have denatured the proteins inside of the egg. We not only do we cook eggs to make them taste a little better, we also cook things to help make sure they're safe. Well, the high temperature of the frying pan not only denatures the protein in the egg, it also denatures any proteins or enzymes that might be in bacteria that maybe were living on the frying pan or living on the surface of the egg. We can also denature proteins and enzymes with pH. Now, if you know anything about pH, this is how we measure acids and bases. Think about it like this. I can take a cucumber and I can put it into a jar of water and put it in my fridge. I have not made a pickle. That cucumber will start to rot inside of that mason jar of water. However, if I take that same cucumber and I put it into a mason jar of vinegar, which is actually acetic acid, the acidity of the vinegar will actually denature lots of proteins and enzymes in the cucumber, preserving it for later. And not only will the acidity of the vinegar preserve the cucumber, it will also denature the proteins and enzymes and any bacteria that may or may not have been living on the skin of the cucumber, making it safer for us to eat. How is DNA different than RNA? Remember, they are both nucleic acids. There are similarities, but there are also differences. In the PowerPoint that I've created for you guys, as well as the video, I go over these similarities and these differences. Yes, this is the correct answer right here. DNA contains deoxyribose as well as a nitrogenous base known as thymine. Let me go ahead and kind of write this out for you guys. Okay, so DNA tends to exist in nature as a double-stranded molecule, and we actually call this structure the double helix. It also contains a special sugar, as I had mentioned before, known as deoxyribose. That's where it gets its name, deoxyribonucleic acid. And then DNA actually has 4 different nitrogen bases: adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine. And thymine is unique because we really only find it in DNA. RNA, and I'll use a different color. RNA is also nucleic acid, but RNA is usually a single strand, like one strand. It also has ribose sugar instead of deoxyribose, which is why it starts with an R for ribose. And instead of having adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine, it has adenine, guanine, cytosine, and it has a special nitrogen base known as uracil, right? So you can see there's similarities, but there's also differences. If you're unfamiliar with the similarities and differences, please make sure to watch that video and take a look at the slides in the PowerPoint that look at nucleic acids, nucleotides, and DNA. Last one. ATP is a nucleic acid used for the transfer of energy. True or false? ATP is a nucleic acid used to transfer energy. True or false? Good. It is true. In fact, ATP is a very, very interesting nucleic acid, right? It also, like any nucleic acid, is made of nucleotides, right? And in this case, it's got the sugar, and the special nitrogenous base is adenosine, right? And instead of 1P, it has 1, 2, 3 phosphates. And so we call it adenosine triphosphate. And believe it or not, there's lots of energy that can be transferred using this molecule. It's kind of like the battery of the cell. Now, let's see who our winners are. Let me clear my drawings. Excellent work, y'all. So the 3 of you guys will get an extra dose of extra credit on y'all's quiz. Let me make sure to record these names. Let me pause my share for just a second so I can save the report, because I can actually see all of y'all's answers, the ones you got right, the ones you got wrong. And so I'm going to quickly download that so I have that for reference. Let's see here. Download report. Okay. Let me resume my share. All right. So I have that downloaded, right? And so I'll use that to give you guys the extra credit. Okay. And so just, and it's almost time. You'll see it. You can see right here. It's going to be posted at 12:20 p.m. Your quiz 2.2 on proteins and nucleic acids is going to pop up in less than a minute. Before you take this quiz, make sure that you've pulled open or opened up your PowerPoint. Y'all, this PowerPoint has all the information that you need. Now, not all of it. The rest of the information that you need to be successful would be in these videos that I've created for you guys. I make these videos, I try to keep them nice and short, and I go over the PowerPoints in detail. And that way you can watch them at your own speed and on your own time. So let me go ahead and, okay, right? So this has lots of information about proteins, the elements, what's the basic unit, some examples of them, what do they do, what are some functions, and you can see some different pictures. Now, when you look at this without watching the video, you might be thinking, what in the world am I looking at? That's why you need to watch the videos, right? I got some information about enzymes here for you, and then we eventually get to the nucleic acids, right? So, oh, look, the sweet house, the phosphorus, and the nitrogen base. I've got a comparison of DNA and RNA for here. for you. I got it again right here. And then eventually that ATP molecule and the reference to its function using for transfer of energy. If you're not looking at these PowerPoints, right, you're digging yourself a deep hole. But more importantly, these videos, guys. Okay. All right. Your quiz, let's see, should be. Let me refresh my screen. Yep, your quiz 2.2 just posted. Please make sure to take care of this. It's only 20 questions. They're all multiple choice. If you have any questions or issues while you're working on it, please don't hesitate to ask. All righty. Well, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, and then I'm going to release you all to get working on your quiz. Please make sure to finish it. Go ahead and take care of it now while the information's fresh in your minds.